Capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's extortion. It's exploitation.
So for those who have not been paying attention, this is something that Biden loves to say, that he's all for capitalism, but that capitalism without competition is exploitation or extortion or something. And for what it's worth, I'm not sure that President Biden even has a clue as to what capitalism means. But put that aside, because I think President Biden is pretty terrible at living up to this standard. There's a lot to say about the recent State of the Union address, but let's pick out one topic that Biden brought up. Biden wants Congress to pass new legislation that would prevent airlines and other businesses from charging what he considers to be junk fees.
And will prohibit airlines from charging $50 round trip for family just to be able to sit together. Baggage fees are bad enough. Airlines can't treat your child like a piece of baggage. Americans are tired of being. We're tired of being played for suckers. So pass the Junk Free Prevention Act so companies stop ripping us off.
First off, if this legislation ever passes, how do we know that airlines would just be willing to leave this money on the table and not raise fare prices accordingly before giving consumers the option of selecting their seat for free? I guess we'll just have to wait and see if these airline corporations will just swallow the lost money and not try to make up for it elsewhere. Secondly, the airline industry is an area where President Biden could fight to allow for more competition by proposing that the federal government lift restrictions on foreign airline competition. According to economist Scott Lincecum, the top 20 airlines in the world do not allow domestic travel within the United States because of airline regulations. As we can see right here, Mr. Lincecum talks about how U.S. law prohibits the commercial transportation of persons, property, or mail between any two U.S. ports in the United States in any aircraft that is not owned and operated by a U.S. individual or corporation, adding that it's very similar to the Jones Act in this respect. Lincecum often uses the European Union as an example, whose comparable fares are often lower than those in the United States, partly due to the fact that the European Union does not have these sorts of restrictions on air travel. Lincecum also uses the United States as an example, talking about how travelers save billions of dollars each year on international flights because the cabotage restrictions are not imposed on international flights, concluding that eliminating these cabotage restrictions would put downward pressure on fares and also likely improve route coverage and customer service. But I imagine a reason why Biden will not push to lift restrictions on international competitors is because it does not square with his protectionist policies and his appeals to Buy American. You know what else might help to bring down airline fare prices is if we had cheaper gasoline prices in the United States. And I know that some people might bring up the fact that gasoline prices have declined recently during Biden's presidency, as Biden himself likes to spike the football on, ignoring the fact that they spiked under his presidency in the first place. And I would counter that gasoline prices would probably be lower if we had a free market in energy. Americans might enjoy even cheaper gasoline if Democrats had not spent roughly the last 2 decades trying to handcuff, if not outright destroy, the fossil fuel industry. Even in this same speech, Biden celebrates the fact that his Inflation Reduction Act does wonders on the fight against climate change. Which, yes, the Inflation Reduction Act did impose restrictions and higher costs on producing fossil fuels. And it gives the Environmental Protection Agency the authority to regulate carbon emissions. And it gives favors like subsidies and tax incentives to companies that create technology like solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles. So somehow President Biden gets to live in this world where he gets to take credit for declining carbon emissions, and he also gets to take credit for declining gasoline prices, while also being able to demonize oil companies for the alleged crime of making too much money.
Have you noticed Big Oil just reported its profits, record profits? Last year they made $200 billion. They invested too little of that profit to increase domestic production. And when I talk to a couple of them, they say, well, we're afraid you're going to shut down all the oil wells and all the oil refineries anyway, so why should we invest in them?
It is interesting that Biden does not even deny the claims that were addressed by the fossil fuel industry. He just pivots to the fact that these companies may have used their gains for stock buybacks to reward their shareholders, as if rewarding your shareholders is somehow this bad thing.
If they had in fact invested in the production to keep gas prices down, instead they used the record profits to buy back their own stock, rewarding their CEOs and shareholders. Corporations ought to do the right thing. That's why I propose we quadruple the tax on corporate stock buybacks and encourage long-term investments.
You get that, folks? Corporations should just ignore their shareholders and do the right thing, and if they don't, then the president is going to try to punish them with taxes. Don't make me tap the sign. Keep in mind that in the same speech, Biden bragged about the fact that he is making corporations who make over, I think, $1 billion a year in profit. Now those companies will have to pay a minimum 15% corporate tax. Because I guess under the Biden brand of capitalism, making money is somehow unfair or wrong or whatever. I mean, if Biden is gonna demonize and penalize people for making too much money, then is he really in favor of capitalism?
No, of course not.
I guess Biden will demonize and penalize you unless you're a company that makes wind turbines or solar panels or electric vehicles or semiconductors, as he also talked about in this speech, in which case Biden will work very hard to ensure that your company enjoys subsidies and tax incentives before bitching and moaning about how unfair the tax system is.
I'm a capitalist, but pay your fair share. I think a lot of you at home agree with me and many people that you know. The tax system is not fair.
You absolutely suck!
Either way, I do find it amusing how easy corporate welfare sells so long as you package it as bringing back jobs or building the middle class or some gobbledygook. Of course, when Joe Biden talks about the shrinking middle class, what he does not mention is the fact that a lot of the people who got squeezed out of the middle class got squeezed into the upper class. Like, oh my God, it looks like American households are making more money. Is that such a bad thing?
Absolutely fucking not.
But back to Biden's comments about big oil. Woo! It's hard to blame oil executives for having this perception when Biden himself has a track record of promising to end the fossil fuel industry.
We are going to get rid of fossil fuels.
Kiddo, I want you to just take a look, okay? You don't have to agree, but I want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel, and I am not going to cooperate. Okay?
Gee, I wonder why oil companies and investors might be just a little hesitant to dump billions of dollars into new production projects like drilling and fracking and new refineries and pipelines when roughly half of the political landscape is excited to shut them down. What's also amusing is that President Biden is trying to take credit for declining gasoline prices, yet here in California, a state where the current and previous governors, both Democrats, have pursued anti-fossil fuel policies in the name of leading the fight on climate change. In California, we have some of the highest gasoline prices in the nation as Governor goofy-ass Gavin Newsom tries to scapegoat big oil, as I've talked about numerous times. And why do we need all of these new restrictions and taxes and regulations on fossil fuels, along with favors for, again, solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles? Why not just free up the market in energy and automobiles and let all of these companies compete with each other on a free market for Americans' dollars?
Capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's extortion. It's exploitation.
And this all goes back to what I said at the beginning. President Biden sucks shit at living up to his own standards. I guess Biden only believes in competition so long as it does not interfere with his pet agendas like climate change and buy American protectionism. How convenient.